So UFC 15 Collision Course took place on October 17th, 1997 in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. We are firmly in the dark ages here, the underground era of UFC, folks. We return to form though with a banger video package. They tell the story of Mark Coleman, Maurice Smith, their fight at UFC 14, 1 minute, 6 minutes, 11 minutes. They show that nasty combo from Mo Smith, and this was really good. I loved this. This was terrific. They then preview tonight's action. In our title fight, we have Mo Smith versus Tank Abbott. And in the super fight, we have Randy Couture versus Vitor Belfort. And we are just going to get into this mess. And in fact, no, in just a second. Bear with me until they mention the name Dan Severn. Those from Pride 1, that retro review, they'll already know. But we open up the gate and come up to Mississippi, and we're at Casino Magic, the first ever barge concept casino in the world. And this thing is small, but as I said, this is the dark era. Bruce Beck is on commentary with Jeff Blatnick, and he dares to utter the name Dan Severn. Now, the story of this card, how did we get here? At UFC 14, commentary say Dan Severn is in negotiations to fight Vitor Belfort at UFC 15. This was before we knew Mark Coleman would lose the belt. So Mark Coleman does lose the belt, and everything's still okay, because we plan on having the rematch at UFC 15, Smith versus Coleman 2. What ends up happening is Mark Coleman gets injured. He can't come back for the rematch, so instead of giving the title fight to Vitor Belfort, the winner of a tournament, winner of the super fight, the next highest ranked contender, we give the title fight to Dan Severn, the guy who just lost to Coleman at UFC 12. So a week prior to this event, we had the first ever Pride event. Now, Pride wanted to have Dan Severn on the card versus Chemo. There is also the rumour Tank Abbott was supposed to face Chemo, but Tank opted not to go. They got Severn versus Chemo. Now, we just reviewed Pride 1. The video is on the channel now, go and watch that. But Dan Severn injured his hand in that fight against Chemo, and now can't take the title fight here tonight. And this would mark the end of Dan Severn and UFC's relationship for a long time. But now, because Severn is out, we have Tank Abbott in the title fight, even although he just lost to Vitor Belfort. How is he not getting the title shot? So, instead of Coleman versus Smith, Severn versus Smith, or Severn versus Vitor, or even the fight that should have been made, Maurice Smith versus Vitor Belfort, we now have Smith versus Tank and Vitor versus Couture in a title eliminator, when Vitor has already beaten the guy chosen to replace Severn in the title fight. What the fuck are we doing here? Okay, now hopefully you followed that, okay, because it hurt my head just reading it. So we move on. Thankfully, we run down the card, our title fight, Smith versus Tank, our super fight, Vitor versus Couture, and Mark Kerr is back to defend his medal from UFC 14 in the heavyweight tournament. And we only have one tournament tonight, guys, so does that mean that we'll be able to fit this event into a 2-hour time slot? No, it fucking doesn't. We are going for another 2.5 hours. These long shows, I swear to God, are the 13th reason why. We have Joe Rogan in the back talking to the doctor. He says Dan Severn is a one-handed fighter. They can't let him compete tonight. And we now open up with alternate fights. Fuck, man. So here, guys, you're losing a tournament, but you're getting the jabronis from the alternate fights. We have Harry Moskowitz, whose nickname is Dirty, and his second name is Moskowitz, and all I can think about is Eric Cartman. He's a local Mississippi guy, so you know what that means, he's getting beat. And he's up against Alex Hunter, a jiu-jitsu fighter, so it's not even as though we're going to get like entertaining scraps here in the alternate fights. Like, we're getting 1997 jiu-jitsu bullshit. And usually I would gloss over the alternate fights because like they just show us the finish of the fight whenever the alternate winner is actually called upon to enter the tournament. But this time they decide we're going to cut a tournament and just show the alternate fights. So to kick off the card, I suppose this is like a spiritual precursor to the prelim fights. But they are part of the actual pay-per-view broadcast. They are part of the official event. So I do have to comment on them, even if it is against my will and under protest. So Hunter beat Moskowitz by split decision, no overtime, boring as fuck. There's my comments on that. So Joe Hamilton is actually our referee, by the way. For the first time since UFC 1, Big John hasn't been refereeing the official opener for these cards. Hamilton normally does all the alternate fights, but this is the first time they've actually been televised as an official part of the pay-per-view. They obviously film all the alternate fights if they need to show them when the alternate is then called upon to enter the tournament. But as an official opener to the show now, Hamilton is still refereeing the alternates. Big John will end up taking the tournament in the super fights though. And whilst we're here at the alternate fights, let's just break down some rule changes real quick. This is the first event where real restrictions have been put on striking. So we know about the eye pokes, the fish hooking now, but headbutts, dick shots, strikes to the back of the head and neck, head stomps, hair pulling, knees and kicks to the head of a grounded opponent. Now this is funny because in our Pride 1 review, Gary Goodridge landed a hellacious soccer kick to Oleg Taktarov before KOing him and putting him on a stretcher. But I wonder if that had anything to do with this rule change. Like, we know they watched Pride. Besides fighters talking to each other about it, multiple UFC fighters were on that card and Severn got injured there. They know about it. So I wonder if they seen Goodridge pull that shit and thought, oh no, we need to stop that before somebody does it here. I remember at UFC 1, Gerard Jordeau hurt himself with a soccer kick, so that probably played a factor as well. But the next alternate fight, Dwayne Kase here, and like, see when you see Olympic level freestyle wrestler, you already know that this guy's going to fucking win. Like, they talk about his relation to Leon and Mike Spinks, like, it's just done. I'll put the photo in here, but there was a brief moment where he grabs Dorr's ankles under his armpits, and I swear to God he was going for the Boston Crab. I genuinely thought we were about to see someone hit a fucking Walls of Jericho in an actual fight. That would have been insane. But look, Kaysen wins here with ground and pound. Actually pretty impressive. I have no idea how he makes heavyweight. They said he was, 215? There is no chance he is 215. But we've had some impressive middleweights, like Guy Mesger, Ortiz, Kevin Jackson. Frank Shamrock isn't far away from debuting. Like, I'm not going to pretend I want to see Jerry Bolander here, but he can also be included. Like, if they were to put Mark Schultz in there as well, Olympic champion who we've seen at UFC 9, he was down as a middleweight when they spoke about him at UFC 14 when they done those rankings. But if we could actually pay these guys, we could get a fucking decent middleweight tournament going. But up next, we get the actual heavyweight tournament. We have the smashing machine Mark Kerr, played by Dwayne Johnson, up against Greg Stott. And you can guess what happens here, but we'll run through this anyway. So the Ranger, Greg Stott, is the founder of his own style. And I thought this was a thing of UFC's past, with John Hess coming up with SAFBA, or Joe Son coming up with Joe Son Do. I thought that being a practitioner and black belt of your own style was dead, but Stott out here proving otherwise. Now, his is called RIP, standing for Ranger International Performance, described as the most effective and expeditious form of hand-to-hand combat in the world. So you know how this fight is going, but he says that he's here with the RIP team to show why RIP rules and others rest in peace. And I cannot stop laughing at this guy. He comes out here wearing these fucking, like, really short cut-off chino shorts, man. Like, what the fuck is up with this guy? Mark Kerr has pre-fight comments where he sounds, again, like just the most polite man. Oh, there's the Just Bleed guy. But Mark Kerr comes out here, sounds like the most polite man on the planet. He says he's working on his cardio. We'll see if he needs it. You can guess. Again. So the fight begins, 17 seconds in, the first strike of the fight, Mark Kerr smashes Stott with a knee in the clinch and kills him for the KO victory. Mark Kerr, again, just the nicest guy, doesn't follow up with any super necessary shots. He knees him in the face, KOs him, and just stands there waiting for Big John to dive in. We have like 4 people looking at Stott here, a damaging blow to the RIP team, nasty KO. And he gives another nice interview with Joe Rogan in the back. Like, that's the 3rd fastest knockout in UFC history. They put it down as 22 seconds, but he was done way before that. 22 seconds is how long it took for for the clock to stop. Big John had stepped in well before that point, but third fastest in UFC history behind Don Fry on Thomas Ramirez, 8 seconds, and Gary Goodridge beating Paul Herrera with those elbows in 13 seconds. Bruce Beck mentions this, and I should have put this in a previous video, I should have, but I didn't think it would be a recurring thing. They call the UFC reality combat, and like Jeff Blatnick using the phrase MMA for the first time at our last event, Bruce Beck is really pushing reality combat. So I just thought that was something to mention here. Like, reality combat or mixed martial arts, I'll let you guys decide which is better. Comment below. But we then get interviews from Tank and Smith, nothing too much of note here. And we move into our next fight. We get Dave Beneteau versus Carlos Barreto. And for the sake of this fight, I'm just going to call these guys Dave and Carlos, and you'll know who's who, because those second names are just too similar and I will get them mixed up. So Carlos comes out here in the Vitor Belfort style gi with the flags on the shoulders and looks confused that he has to take it off before going into the octagon. This does not bode well. Dave comes out. We haven't seen him since the Ultimate 1995. He was the runner-up at UFC 5, losing to Dan Severn. We were supposed to see Dave at UFC 9. He was supposed to fight Gary Goodridge. He got injured by his training partner Mark Schultz, who stepped in to replace him and was actually very impressive. So since then he's been injured off and on. We haven't been able to see him for a while. And I thought Dave was okay. He was a fine fighter. Competent is probably the best way to put it. But that would get you far at those initial events because the level of competition now that, not that the level of competition is stacked now, but the average skill level of the fighter, I would say, has improved. It's not great, but it's still better. So they clinch to start the fight, and Carlos immediately fouls. Just immediately, when he hits him with a headbutt. Big John tells the judges, and Bruce Beck tells us, that it's 3 fouls and you're disqualified. We stay clinched for a while as Carlos continues to cheat, holding on to the fence, but it doesn't get spotted by Big John, who splits the two up. After the restart, Carlos gets the takedown. Dave takes the back, fouls him again with strikes to the back of the head. And what the actual fuck is this idiot doing? Seriously, he should be disqualified already, only after 2 minutes. But again, let's not let the rules get in the way of a fair fight. They clinch against the fence again. Carlos grabs the fence again, and Big John tells him to stop holding the fence, but just lets him away with it. Carlos pulls guard like an idiot and then lets Dave smash him with ground and pound before they get back to the feet and then break. Dave this time gets the takedown at 5 minutes into the fight, and nothing comes from it. We break again, and while I'm watching this, I'm just thinking Mark Kerr would destroy both of these guys. Even like at the same time, I think Kerr would beat both these guys. Dave keeps putting his hands on his knees, pretending as though he's trying to taunt his opponent, which is what commentary is trying to tell us. He isn't trying to taunt him, he is genuinely gassed. He's moving so slow, but manages to get a takedown anyway. I'm not even going to call out the fence grabbing anymore, because both these guys could have been disqualified at this point. And now we're just stuck in guard. We make it to the feet, only to clinch against the fence again. And it gets broken up for stalling. Another takedown for Dave. We stay here until the end of regulation, before then going to a 3-minute overtime. Before the overtime starts, Big John tells Carlos and his corner to stop holding the fence, or he will be disqualified, as though that matters at this point. Only 30 seconds in, he clinches Dave against the cage, holds the fence again. Can we just disqualify this guy already? Carlos now gets the takedown, absolutely zero work on the ground, some short punches, no impact, more fence grabbing, fuck this guy. Close fight, neither guy really took this and made it theirs, no robbery here, the win's really up for grabs, but the judges come to a unanimous decision and Dave Beneteau is your winner. He is going to the final to face Mark Kerr. Good luck, buddy, we know how that one is going to go. But will he make it there? He has an interview with Joe Rogan, where he says, I'll see how I feel. I don't feel injured, but I don't know if I want to fight him. Him being Mark Kerr. I'm paraphrasing here, but that is nearly what he said. That's the general gist. He said, I'm going to wait a minute and then make an executive decision whether I'll fight Mark Kerr or not. Straight pussy from Dave. Fuck this guy as well. And just to spoil this now, this is the last time we see Dave Beneteau in UFC. Good. So next up, we have our first of 2 super fights, Vitor Belfort and Randy Couture. We get some propaganda for the Phenom here, and nothing we haven't really seen before, but I will just say this again, it is ridiculous that this guy is not getting the title fight after a tournament win and a super fight win. We then hear from Randy Couture, and they are pushing the angle that this fight will go to the mat, and we'll finally see Vitor on the ground, so we'll see if they're right about that. As we go to the octagon for the entrances and the introductions, the fight starts, and the first contact is made by Vitor to clinch against the cage. Nothing comes of it before they break. Well, nothing comes of it besides half of Randy Couture's shorts, which are now ripped all the way down one side. Unbelievably distracting. But these two, I'm not kidding, okay? These two, just standing there and the speed at which they move, you can tell that these two are on another level compared to everybody else. And as I said that, as I wrote that down, Randy Couture gets the takedown and shows he's just like everybody else who gets the takedown and then just fucking sits on it. He finally takes the risk, going for the neck crank, can't get it, ends up in the guard, which is literally the worst case scenario. Like, going for the finish when you're on top in 1997 UFC, rarely do you see people even like get up. They just try to get to full guard. That's literally the worst case scenario, and you're still on top. That's why I get so pissed off when people get on top and don't do anything with it, because worst case scenario, you're still in the dominant position. So we end up sitting in the guard for a few minutes. Couture tries to transition to side control, skipping the half guard, and Vitor is able to get a sprawl before Couture hits the grounded opponent with knees, and nothing gets done by Big John here. Commentary, they don't even mention that it's against the rules. Again, let's not let the rules get in the way of a fair fight. But we get back to the feet, clinched, and Couture lands the better shots, I would say, some nice uppercuts. He then just slams the shit out of them, hurting Vitor, and he is tired and slumps to the ground or tries to pull guard, basically the same thing. Like, when you pull guard, you're basically just admitting defeat. Couture lands more knees to the grounded opponent. Again, the rules make that illegal, but let's not let the rules get in the way of a fair fight. Vitor gives up the back. Couture gets the finish on Vitor, and he clearly knows the rules because none of those last punches were to the back of the head, even though that's all that was open. He was going round the side to hit the face, and Couture wins. The crowd chants USA because Randy Couture's success is also that of the nations, and Vitor is lying on the ground here. He is in a bad way. I will admit to this was domination from Couture, and commentary say that this is a bigger upset than Smith versus Coleman, which might sound ridiculous given what Randy Couture's reputation would become. However, like, Couture's already won a tournament. He's not completely useless, and Smith versus Coleman was a bigger upset. Coleman was 6-0, 2 tournament wins, first heavyweight champion, and Smith had a negative MMA record, 3-6, by the way, before that fight, so that was a far bigger upset. But we see Randy in the back, and Bruce Beck calls Joe Rogan Smoking Joe Rogan. How long did that nickname last? Randy dedicated the fight to a friend of his and says that he was just having fun in there. Now, the heavyweight tournament final, Dave Beneteau isn't in there, and Dwayne Kase is back, and to be honest, this is the best case scenario. These two are the best fighters in the tournament, so at least they're in the final. But like we said earlier, Kase is 20 years old and small for the weight class. I have no idea how he made heavyweight. And Mark Kerr, notoriously massive. Dave Beneteau out here saying he could beat Mark Kerr if all things were equal. He couldn't. But because he had a long fight beforehand, he doesn't want to fight Mark Kerr. Dave Beneteau is the biggest pussy ever. Like, throw him in the pile with Hoist Gracie, Joe Moreira, Tony Frickland, all these other guys we've seen to this point who are completely bitch-made and soft. So, you know, like, what you signed up for when you enter a tournament. Fucking play the game or don't. You know what the rules are. You're in control of how long your fight goes. Completely pussy. Just, he isn't even making up an injury. Like, he's just saying, I don't want to fight Mark Kerr. And Joe Rogan says, that's a smart decision, and Dave will be back. No, he fucking won't, okay? Dave will not be back in UFC. And look, I wouldn't want to fight Mark Kerr either at this point. But when you sign up for it, That's what you get paid for. That's what you agree to. You do it, because if the shoe's on the other foot and Mark Kerr was in a 15-minute fight and Dave was in there for 15 seconds, then he would want to fight Mark Kerr. So it's good they don't have Dave back, because we cannot encourage that behaviour. We cannot reward that behaviour. We get Mark Kerr out here, and commentary's talking about his relationship with Mark Coleman, the Olympic wrestlers. We even get a name drop of Kurt Angle here, who won the 1996 Olympic gold medal in wrestling with a broken neck, because he is just that guy. Kerr, look, the fight starts, Kerr gets the takedown, Kase and turns, give the back to Kerr, Kerr gets the rear naked choke and the win. So they announce Mark Kerr as the winner, and they call him the specimen. I think I prefer the smashing machine. He gets presented with a medal, and that's 2 in a row for Mark Kerr, and this is his last tournament. He says he's looking forward to fighting single bouts. He names Randy Couture, Vitor Belfort, Maurice Smith, and he just gets it. They ask him, how do you feel about fighting other wrestlers? But he correctly says the thing that makes MMA work is the different disciplines fighting each other, and there's enough top guys at other disciplines that we can fight each other without having to fight the guys from our same discipline. And again, I can't say it enough, he comes across really well. But sadly, this is the last time we see Mark Kerr in UFC. Luckily for the channel, though, he will be in Pride. So he'll actually be on Pride 2, which will be the next Pride event we watch in 1998, which will be in a few reviews' time. We have a few UFCs before then. We then get Big John McCarthy propaganda. They show him berating fighters, abusing fighters, even attacking other fighters. No, they don't, but he does some nice promo here for the sport, and it explains the Let's Get It On thing coming from boxing referee Mills Lane before Jerry Cooney and Larry Holmes before the fight. He told them both, let's get it on. Big John took that and decided that's how he would start fights. So he didn't steal it, he borrowed and adapted. Commentators tell us how big a part John McCarthy plays in the sport, which he does, to be fair. This video's already going long, but you can look this up on your own. We might need to do a Big John video at some point and his impact on MMA and UFC, but we then move on to Maurice Smith and Tank Abbott videos before the main event. We get the entrances, we get the introductions, and the time has arrived. Here we go. Let's get it on. The main event for the title, Tank versus Smith. Tank out the gates quick, unable to land anything really. Good defense by Smith, but Tank then shoots and misses. After that, Tank slows down big time as Smith lands a couple of low kicks and the crowd starts chanting for Tank. Tank is able to clinch Smith against the fence. Then on the break, Tank actually drops Smith. Like, it was as though Smith tried to duck and Tank was able to just catch him on the way down, knocks him down. But now we're here in the guard. And Tank is actually able to transition to side control before then trying to get to mount and getting sent back to guard. Tank is able to land in the guard as Smith looks to isolate the arm for a Kimura, just to make sort of Tank think about like his arm. Like, it's not really a true attempt, but he throws it in there just to make Tank think, and he ends up just letting it go. But at 6 minutes, we get Tank to side control and then back to fucking guard, and Smith lands elbows to the back of the head. Again, against the rules. Don't let the rules get in the way of a fair fight, though. Smith tries for the arm again, can't get it, and Big John stands this up. Tank looks really tired, and he's like noticeably limping now. And look, I only counted 2 leg kicks, but the corner of Smith noticed this is a Frank Shamrock special here. This is his coaching expertise. They tell Maurice here straight for the low kicks when this fight restarts. And Smith lands 2 low kicks. It might have been 3 actually, fuck. And like, irrelevant. He lands a couple of low kicks and the fight is called. Tank cannot stand on the leg and the crowd start booing. So we have our first official leg kick stoppage. We had Marco Huas knock down Varland with a leg kick, but that fight was finished with ground and pound. Here's an official leg kick stoppage. After the fight, we get an interview. Maurice doesn't even really sound out of breath. He says that Dan Severn and Chemo had a fight last week. They don't mention Pride by name, but says that that fight happened and he expected Severn to pull out, so he was already anticipating a change in opponent. He gives Tank credit, says that he's a tough fighter, and now here is Tank in the fucking 86th for life shirt, and he says he's been partying. Joe Rogan asked Tank if he wants a rematch. Tank says he wants a lot of rematches, but puts the loss down to the fact that it was short notice and he's been, in his words, partying for the last however long. Now, this event here not only marks the end of the road for Mark Kerr, but also Bruce Beck. And, like, at our next event, we will be introduced to Mike Goldberg, who would go on to become the voice of UFC, famously alongside Joe Rogan. And that was a partnership for a long time. Those two covered some of the most iconic fights and moments in UFC. Now, we still have to wait for Rogan to join the desk, but I wanted to have something here for at the end for Bruce Beck. The guy really got on my tits at the start, right? And that's all documented. You can go back and watch those early reviews, but he was standing next to Jim Brown, one of the worst of all time. And I will say that Bruce improved a lot. He got better after every event, and next to Jeff Blatnick, those two had a really good partnership. When we'd have guests on like Don Wilson or other fighters, he wasn't overbearing. He was really good. And he let Jeff explain what was happening and then just chipped in when necessary. I think he was pretty good, but sadly it is all over. And Mike Goldberg will now be at the desk. As for this show, not bad. Not going to be the guy ad nauseum complaining about the amount of filler here, but yes, there was too much. And I wish we could just start with the tournament, and if we need the alternates, we can show the highlights from their alternate fight, you know, just like we used to. As far as the actual content, I enjoyed Mark Kerr. It's sad to see him leave, but at least we'll get to watch him in Pride, on this channel at least. We put in, we put in 2 good performances, and we're never going to talk about Dave Beneteau ever again, thankfully. Dwayne Kase steps up. He had a good alternate fight, but I mean, Kerr was just too big when it actually got to the tournament. The super fight was an unexpected one-sided squash for Randy Couture, who put in a good performance. Vitor really should have had the fucking title fight here, and Tank could have fought Couture in an eliminator, but oh well, we're here now. And the title fight between Tank and Smith, honestly not bad. Okay, most of the action took place on the ground, but there was actual attempted action with transitions and such. Fight ends via leg kicks. Kind of anticlimactic finish, but still decisive, so I'm not mad about that. And this actually brings me on to my final point, my closing arguments here. There was 2 signs in the crowd here that people had brought themselves. These weren't planted, you could tell. And these signs literally said, Jiu-Jitsu is Jiu-Shitsu, and the other one says, Lion's Den is full of straight pussies. Now, I agree, and this is my point. MMA fans don't change. Real MMA fans do not switch up, okay? I'm commentating on these reviews or on these events 30 years after the fact, okay? And I'm saying now what actual fans are saying then about these fucking guys going in there with no intent to finish in what future years would just evolve into this mad dash for control time and decisions, which we still see to this day. And people try to gaslight you into thinking that this is not only acceptable, but good MMA. Real fans are the fucking guys here in 1997. Maybe not like the guy on the screen right now with the Just Bleed, because it's not even about just seeing straight violence and just bloodbaths, but it's real fucking MMA fans want to see intent to finish. When I was talking about Tank on the ground there with Maurice Smith, actually attempting to transition to get into a better position to finish the fight, not just to sit there on top of him and try and fucking eke out a decision. Actual intent is to finish the fight. I just wanted to put that in there now, or at the end of this video, because the contrast to modern MMA fans where there's almost a willingness to accept Chimaev just lying on top of DDP or Islam just lying on top of JDM, and then you're told, well, that's just like the highest level of the sport, and it's like, you're not a fucking real fan. And I don't like getting into this whole I like this and you can't like that argument, but to sit there and think that people want to see this and should accept this as being the highest level of the sport, where even in 1997 people are calling this style bullshit, like, I had to speak on that there at the end just for my own sanity. Next review on the channel, UFC 15.5 when UFC goes to Japan for UFC Japan Ultimate Japan, where we have 2 tournaments, 2 debutants, Frank Shamrock and Sakuraba. Tank Abbott and Vitor Belfort will be on the card. Main event heavyweight title on the line, Maurice Smith versus Randy Couture. This should be a good one, folks, so leave your comments on this review below on this card. Like this video, subscribe for more content, hit the notify bell to stay up to date with the content as it drops. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.